In September of 2017, I started a series reviewing the Friday the 13th and Jason series, and despite zero new entries minus a new short film recently, I failed to complete my review series by my set deadline of October 2017. It is now September of 2025, 8 years later, and I still have several films left to go. Can I finish my marathon within a decade? Who knows, especially if the new Jason universe truly expands the franchise the way it's intended to. I actually have a video schedule now though, and I am truly hoping to finish this series within my lifetime. But if I die before I complete it, perhaps a future generation can complete my series so your grandchildren can see my review of the 2009 reboot film. Who knows? Anyhow, Friday the 13th Part 7, The New Blood, is a film that I didn't like as a kid, but upon my most recent couple of rewatches, I've learned to enjoy it a bit. This is where Friday the 13th, I think, really diverged from the core thesis of camp counselors dying in the woods in strange ways and embraces the supernatural world, something previously just reserved for our main man, Jason, and giving the supernatural powers to other characters within the universe, perhaps making the world that surrounds Camp Crystal Lake a bit more of a fantasy than it used to be. Now, this isn't new. The other big slasher franchises, Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy and Halloween with Michael Myers, also started getting a bit weirder by the time this film was created, so it's not really a surprise that Jason would take the same route. Okay, let's slow it down a bit. Friday the 13th Part 7 dropped in 1988 and is obviously the 7th installment in the series. The series was also starting to go on the downswing for the box office receipts, with this film landing at $19 million on a budget of $2.8 million. A slight drop from Part 6, which earned a similar box office yield, but far from the past peak of nearly $40 million we saw for the first film. This figure will continue to shrink through the next couple of films, though. This was perhaps proving, though, that Friday the 13th was losing some of its previous profitability, but being cheap, these films were still basically guaranteed money makers, so you might as well just shit them out. John Carl Buechler took over direction on this film. He's a makeup artist who turned into a director later on, working in both fields in some degree. Mostly directing B films, but working on makeup for other franchises such as Halloween, the original Reanimator film, Nightmare on Elm Street, and more interestingly, this would be his only work in the Friday the 13th franchise in either field. Anyways, when this film was conceived, the idea was a possible Freddy vs. Jason crossover, an idea that would be kicked around a lot before finally coming to fruition in 2003, 15 years after this film's release. Though, as I said, Friday was starting to lose some box office stock, and the Nightmare films continued to thrive, with the Nightmare on Elm Street gaining on average twice as much money in ticket sales than Friday the 13th. Not to mention the fact that at the time Friday the 13th was being put out by Paramount and Freddy's home was New Line. It made no sense for the newer, smaller studio to play ball with a major studio to help a franchise that was less successful, despite some fan interest. Thus, New Line didn't see a great reason in working with Paramount on that crossover. With New Line out and Freddy off the table, producers dreamed up a film that would be more or less Jaws, but with Jason instead of a shark. That being an HOA coming in to gentrify Crystal Lake, but despite Jason starting to go on his mad killing spree you'd expect he has, the town's leadership denies the danger in search of profit. This would, however, prove too hard. That would involve a bigger cast, different environments, and more plot. Nah, they ended up with a plot about a teen with telekinesis powers. We're getting to the plot in a second here, though. Anyhow, this film is notable for introducing the most famous Jason Voorhees actor, Kane Hodder, who would be the main Jason for 4 films, and this is probably the version most well recognized, being this giant man who wears a hockey mask and slaughters people. To outsiders, you may wonder how Jason's 6th entry as antagonist would really reinvent the wheel, and I, to an extent, agree, But I don't want to piss off the die-hard fans, and honestly, Kane Hodder is very badass as Jason. So, you know what? It's a cool addition, and it's something to talk about this late in the series. It also proves that even this deep into the franchise, the series can still add some new fan-favorite elements and didn't grow totally stale. CJ Graham, the Jason from Part 6, was a bit sad about this since he hoped to become Jason the way Boris Karloff became Frankenstein back in the day, an ambition that ironically would get pulled away from him and pretty much given to Kane Hodder. This film follows Tina, a teenage girl who discovers she had telekinesis powers after accidentally drowning her abusive father in Crystal Lake. I don't know what's in the water there that causes supernatural shit to just happen, but whatever. Flash forward, and Tina is a reserved young woman haunted by the events that transpired with her father years earlier, working with Dr. Cruz and her mother to try extreme exposure therapy at Crystal Lake, something that Dr. Cruz does to try to trigger telekinetic episodes so he can gain clout as a doctor. Next door, as you may imagine, are a group of teenagers that hit the archetypes you'd expect: the manipulative hoe, the preppy guy, the stolen valor guy, the stoner, and Nick, the main love desire of Tina. Anyhow, they think Tina is weird and crazy, so they chastise her, but eventually Jason comes and starts to slaughter them one by one, as they do the usual activities of partying and banging. And Nick and Tina grow a love connection. Dr. Cruz also gets murdered, as you'd expect, since he's the sleaze in this movie, though Tina's decent woman mom also gets killed, but you gotta expect it. Gotta squeeze in as much murder in these films as possible, that's why we're all here. Tina figures out Dr. Cruz's plan and finally confronts Jason using her psychic powers to first blow him up before a brief second conflict where she has the ghost of her abusive dad save her by having him drag Jason to the bottom of Crystal Lake. I guess he had an arc in hell or something that caused him not to be such a bad guy after all. Kind of a weird thing they did there, but we'll come back to that. Nick and Tina survive their adventure as you'd expect, and Jason is again put on ice or lake. I don't know. What do you want me to say? Tina is our lead, and she is a disturbed teenager following her father's death years earlier. Her father was abusive, but this doesn't really play a part in this film, I suppose, beyond his death at least. All the kids hate Tina, minus Nick, who falls in love with her, despite the competition from the popular Melissa, who seems like some sort of sociopath.
What's the matter?
I lied.
Lied about what?
About everything. You just don't turn me on, really. Oh, come on.
Tina fears her powers and has PTSD from her father's death, physically feeling unpleasant on Crystal Lake, a fact that Dr. Cruz is happy to exploit. Tina is kind of like Carrie, but she never really snaps in the same way as Carrie. She just kind of eventually uses her powers to get in an X-Men-esque fight with Jason Voorhees. Dr. Cruz kind of looks like a Goodwill version of Robert Downey Jr., but he's a scientist man assigned to her case. He is a selfish man looking to further his career and become famous for being the first researcher of the telekinetic. Anyhow, he basically gets Tina's mom killed, but ultimately gets gutted himself. Nick is fascinated with Tina and ends up falling in love with her. He's brave, I guess, and he has her back during the battle with Jason, but, you know, he's the final girl's boyfriend. They're all the same. This film has 16 kills, and honestly, the creativity is kind of slowing down a bit. I like Tina's father's death, mostly how the dock sways and breaks up the way it does. It's kind of neat, I guess. Judy's death in the sleeping bag was pretty iconic and famously reused in Jason X, but a through-line theme in these kills is lacking blood or special effects. Like, most of these don't even have a squib thrown in to show some blood. Remember Jason's machete to the eye in part 4? Yeah, that type of stuff is gone. It's sad too, since we have a professional makeup artist directing the film. Why can't we get some brutal body shots where they're just covered in blood or all messed up? These films aren't high art, they're basically fun special effects kill movies, that's what we're here for, and I just find this film very much lacking in that department. It's definitely quantity over quality in this one. Even at 16 kills, it is on the low end for the series, past the final Friday, where these films averaged around 20 kills or more. One thing I think is peak here is Jason's look. The broken corner of the hockey mask, you see his zombie form and fucked up teeth. If the director went out of his way to do something, it was to make an iconic upgrade to Jason with awesome makeup and of course, Kane Hodder in the role, which everybody loves. Jason looks like a soggy, slimy corpse, and I absolutely love that. I wish the makeup effects were added to some of the kills in this movie, but you know what? Jason looks really fucking good here. I like that they blew up the cabin and had these big fire effects. I mean, that's cool. I like when they blow shit up. It's fun. Harry Manfredini and Fred Molin wrote the score for this, and it works pretty well. The vibe isn't really inventing the 80s horror music genre. It's pretty ambient, and it's just the same shit in a different movie. Maureen O'Connor, Martin Sadoff, and Barry Zetlin edited this movie, and I have very little to say. Obviously, I find the kills kind of disappointing, but I don't think that was really on them so much. And they try with Foley and creative cuts to spruce up the death scenes a bit, which are largely a little limp in this film, if I'm being honest, which I'm almost wondering if that has to do with something like TV syndication or something. I don't know why they just simplified these deaths so much. One thing I will say is this film, shot by Paul Elliott, is one of the better looking films from a cinematography standpoint. It's actually pretty ambient. I like the fog. I think it has some good spatial awareness when you have things like the cabin fight scene, and it kind of feels like a psychological thriller horror crossover, which is what this film was going for. Like, the cinematography by Paul Elliott really knew what it was going for, and it succeeded in bringing that. Which I think brings me around to my core opinion. This film sucks as a Friday the 13th entry, but is a semi-compelling psychological horror B film. I think part of the problem is at times it feels like two films playing at the same time, side by side, with some crossovers in the middle. Tina's plot largely takes place separately from the other teenagers, which really has nothing going on but the deaths to sell the thing. Tina isn't all that eager to be around these characters, and much of the true drama lies in Tina's exploitation at the hands of Dr. Cruz, which is something you'd see much more in a psychological thriller than a slasher film. Okay, but really, I mean, a lot is getting packed into around 75 minutes of story when you take out the credits and 10 minutes of totally unnecessary and irrelevant recap of the previous entries that they throw at the start of all these movies. The psychic powers go kind of supernatural. I do think it feels a bit like jumping the shark, though. But don't worry, it only goes further into the strange and paranormal as we go on. Jason comes back to life when she wishes her father would come back to life, kind of like some be careful what you wish for thing.
I'm so sorry. I wish I could bring you back.
I guess she has magic wish powers or something too. I don't know if that's actually explained in this film. I didn't think that was a traditional symptom of telekinesis. You know what? I guess in this movie, magic wish powers come with the telekinesis. It's all fiction anyways, whatever. I like in part 6 where the lightning hit Jason to bring him back, because it's like, okay, well, that's what happened. I guess it like shocked his zombie juices and got him going. With the wish thing, I have to question, like, what's with the wishing powers? Is this a power? Is it a coincidence? Was he just happening to come back at this time? Was he in like a coma? And this is when he decides to like come back to life? I don't know. And why did it bring Jason back instead of John?
You're crazy.
This film probably could have been positioned to be a film about like fighting through trauma. And it kind of is, but really the death of her father was just set up for her powers. I don't think it lands on that super well, especially since we exclusively see him as an abuser that is basically killed because Tina's so scared of him. Then he comes back as a ghost to defend her. Like, nope, he was a good man who made a mistake, I guess. But the moment where he was shown to have ever been a good guy never happens. There isn't like a counter flashback that shows like he was a good man. I guess he was abusive, but like, who cares, you know? Or maybe in like hell he just figured his shit out. I don't know.
Please don't drink anymore.
Don't tell me what to do!
The extra characters feel kind of frivolous, to be honest. They don't do shit, which is normal, but the main lady is so detached from it all that it feels like such a transparent reason to add extra kills. But then the kills aren't even that cool, so it's like, what's the fucking point? If you add pointless characters just to make a few deaths, like at least give us 2 or 3 that are really, really badass or something, I don't know. Why are you wasting my time on these glorified extras and their deaths, especially when the film cuts away and has no blood whatsoever? What'd they think we were here for? Anyhow, as I said, this film did okay, but the franchise was on the downturn commercially. Critically, the film fared pretty poorly, though in 1988, no critic gave stuff like this a good score. Though, even so, more modern critics maintain it's not really the best. I probably enjoy it more than most people do, as I think there were some interesting enough ideas here, and it's just kind of a interesting gimmick to spice up the franchise a little bit, but it has some execution issues that left something to be desired.